I think that there's this narrative of it's either us or them. There's no space for both of us on this land. When I was a soldier in the Jenin area guarding the fence, we were patrolling the fence between the Jenin area and Israel. And it's this like what we call a smart fence, which when someone touches it, then you get an indication and then you go there with your Jeep. And one time we had this, and there were two kids who were gotta be, from my memory, at least like the maximum 8, maybe 7, 8-year-olds, and they touched the fence. I don't know what they were doing there, but our commander, our officer, he had this idea that they were maybe sent to touch the fence in order to test how fast it takes us to get to that point. And therefore, in order to kind of ruin their idea or their scheme, we will arrest these kids so they know not to try to think about doing anything funny, So basically, we had a reason why to arrest these kids for touching the fence. And I was sent to arrest these two kids and put them in a military Jeep and drive up to our base and put them in this little room. And it made sense for a second. And then I was holding these two kids, brothers maybe, or friends, and closing the Jeep. And they were crying, terrified, holding each other. And they were looking at me, and they were terrified for me. And I'm a good guy. Why would anybody be so terrified for me, a 7-year-old? And then I realized I'm kidnapping these kids. There was some kind of military logic for a second there. Why? And then you see what you're doing. And then, as you said, when you're at that point, when you're armed and you're arresting these little kids, and you don't want to feel, nobody wants to feel like you're doing something bad. So dehumanization in that moment could be really helpful, So generally speaking, as you said, I think that the more you need to control other people, and controlling them through intimidation, through putting their heads down, through humiliation. Yeah, you need to also, it's more difficult to do that if you see their humanity, for sure. And I think this war really crystallized something for me, and I think it might be true for both sides. Not that I can speak about the other side because I'm not Palestinian, but I think that there's this narrative of it's either us or them. There's no space for both of us on this land. And there are a lot of people who believe that between the river and the sea. And it goes to our government and actually many of people in the opposition, but it's also true to the Hamas and the kind of ideology they serve. And once you believe that there's no space for both people to live peacefully in the land or at all, then you have to turn to dehumanization, because either us or them means that one of us needs to be either exterminated or transferred out. And to accept that idea, I think it's quite difficult. So I think, again, dehumanization is really helpful for holding on to that narrative, which is probably the majority of Israelis. I hope not. I hope I'm wrong. And I think this is also what has been crystallized for me in these days as an activist, is that we have to crack that narrative. It seems so simple and maybe even like kumbaya-ish, like, oh, there's place for both nations on this land. But I believe that the narrative is so important because it also serves Israeli violence and continuing the war. Because if there's really no space for both of us, and it's either Palestinians who can live on this land or Israelis, then this pushes Israelis to this corner where they feel more justified with their actions. And obviously the opposite is true too. So if you only believe that it's either us or them, then war is the only option. It's very fertile land for war and dehumanization. So I believe that is kind of something that we need to put our focus on right now.